بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعين ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم. My dear Muslims, firstly, I want to advise you with a beautiful hadith from the Messenger Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this is a special type of hadith. It's known as a hadith Qudsi. A hadith Qudsi, for those of you who do not know, it's a narration of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but he's saying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said such and such. So this hadith is found in the famous 40 hadiths of Imam al-Nawawi. And the hadith says that this is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saying that, O my servants, I have forbidden oppression upon myself, and I have made it forbidden amongst you. So do not oppress one another. O my servants, all of you are astray, except the one whom I have guided. So seek guidance from me, and I shall guide you. O my servants, all of you are hungry, except the one whom I fed. So seek food from me, and I shall feed you. O my servants, all of you are naked, except those whom I have clothed. So seek clothing from me, and I shall clothe you. O my servants, you commit sins by day and by night, and I forgive all sins. So seek forgiveness from me, and I shall forgive you. O my servants, you will not attain harming me so as to harm me, and you will not attain benefiting me so as to benefit me. O my servants, if the first of you and the last of you and the humans of you and the jinn of you were all as pious as the most pious heart of any individual amongst you, then this would not increase my kingdom an iota, even a tiny little bit. O my servants, if the first of you and the last of you and the humans of you and the jinns of you were as wicked as the most wicked heart of any individual amongst you, then this would not decrease my kingdom an iota. O my servants, if the first of you and the last of you and the humans of you and the jinns of you were to all to stand together in one place and ask of me, and I were to give everyone what he requested, then that would not decrease what I possess, except what is decreased of the ocean when a needle is dipped into it. O my servants, it is but your deeds that I account you, and then I recompense you for. So he who finds good, let him praise Allah, and he who finds other than that, let him blame no one but himself. I narrate this hadith, my dear Muslims. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in this hadith, he starts off by saying that I have made oppression upon myself, and I have made oppression amongst you. I have forbidden oppression upon myself, and I have forbidden it amongst you. And also, I want to remind you of the verse, the advice that Luqman, he gave to his sons. He said, I remember when, and as this is mentioned in Surah Luqman, I remember when Luqman said to his son, when he was advising him, O my son, join not in worship others with Allah. Verily the greatest oppression, the greatest zulm, indeed the greatest zulm, verily joining others in worship with Allah is the greatest zulm, the greatest oppression. So the oppression here obviously mentions about the shirk is the greatest oppression, the greatest violation. And when we talk about oppression, my dear brothers, we're talking about when people's rights are not given, when people's rights are violated. And obviously the greatest right of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is that we worship Him alone. And we see people all around us violating that right. We see the Christians, the Hindus and stuff violating the right of Allah by worshipping others besides Allah, by associating partners in the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We see in the parliaments people violating the rights of Allah. So what do we do when others violate our rights and oppress us? First and foremost, we don't oppress back. If someone oppresses us, it does not give us the green light to oppress them back. But if we were to do injustice to them, then we will also be sinful. It does not mean if someone does injustice to us, that we can do injustice to them. Yes, there is a concept of retaliation and qisas, for example, but not to go beyond the limits Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has set. Like for example, if someone maybe were to steal from you and violate your right, does not mean you can just go and kill them. This is going beyond the limit which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has set. In the same way, you could in a marriage, you have a husband and wife. Maybe the husband is not given the rights to his wife as he should. And obviously this is a violation against the rights of the woman. But the woman cannot violate against the husband, violate his rights. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given the woman the rights if she is violated. There is a concept in Islam of the khula. The woman can break the contract if her rights are being violated and not being met. So if someone is oppressing us, my dear Muslims, what do we do? Is it a case of we just cry to ourselves, I'm being oppressed? Is it a case of this is just what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has willed? Like the Christian priests, they used to say, this is just what God has willed for you. Rather, we must stop the oppression either by changing the oppressor or fleeing from that oppression. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Quran, in Surah An-Nisa, verse 97 to 99. Verily, as to those whom the angels take in death, when they were wronging themselves, when they were oppressing themselves, that the angels say to them, in what condition were you? And they reply, we were weak and oppressed on the earth. We are being oppressed. And the angels, they say, was not the earth of Allah wide enough for you to migrate? So their excuse, they said, we were weak and oppressed. We were being oppressed. And the angels, they respond back and they say, was the earth of Allah not wide enough? Leave, the door is already open. And the verse continues, for such men will find their abode in the hell. What an evil destination. Except the weak amongst them of the men, women and children who cannot devise a plan, nor can they find a way out. For those there is hope that Allah will forgive them, and Allah is ever oft pardoning and oft forgiving. So those people, this verse I mentioned, the people, they were being oppressed in a certain community, and they made the excuse that look, we were oppressed. And the angels replied back to the excuse that they gave. Was the earth of Allah not wide enough? Could you not flee from this oppression? They did not reply back because they knew the answer. Because they never made any intention to flee from the oppression. So then they had no one to blame but themselves. As another verse in the Quran mentions, that we never oppress them. Rather, they oppress themselves. I'll give you an analogy, my dear Muslim, if it's not still making sense. Imagine, for example, you had a phone contract. And the company you are paying money to, they're not giving you good service. The line always cuts out. And the signal always drops when you can't make a phone call. But every year you renew that contract. Every year you're paying them. And then you say to them, this company that I'm with, it's so terrible. Their service is poor. I pay them all this money. But yet every year you renew with them. It doesn't make sense. You would go to another company. So if the company is not giving you good service, move somewhere else, move to another company. If then you continue to moan and you say, look, this service is so poor, I'm paying all this money, they're oppressing me. I'm paying all this money and I don't get good service. Why didn't you go somewhere else? Go to another company. So don't blame anyone but yourself for this kind of poor service that you're paying all this money for, and now you feel you're being oppressed by this company. And I'll remind you, my dear Muslims, of the hadith of the man who killed 99 people. We mention it again and again. He killed 99 people and he was regretful for what he did. So he asked a man, a pious worshipper, that is the forgiveness for me. The man said no. He was a pious man, but he weren't knowledgeable. This is where the danger, when you went to ask in a matter, you ask the knowledgeable person, you ask the alim. And this man gave a verdict with his own lack of knowledge, and he said, no forgiveness for you. So the man just thought, I'll kill him as well. And then he still was regretful for what he did. And he asked the alim, he asked the knowledgeable, is there forgiveness for me? And the man obviously understands Allah correctly. He said, what barrier can there be between you and the forgiveness of Allah? But he gave him some advice. You must leave this village that you are, this village of sinful people, because his environment, it was causing him to disobey Allah and commit sins. And he advised him to go to this other place where the people there are pious people. And then obviously he set out on his journey, and the death came to him. And obviously the dispute was there with the angels. Where should we take this man? This man was doing all these murders, all these crimes. And the other angels, they dispute, this is a man of paradise. He was sincere. He will seek forgiveness of Allah. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered that the distance to be measured from the place he left to the place he was going. And as one narration he mentions that he was closer to the place of the pious people. Another narration he mentions that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala expanded the earth just by a handspan. He was closer to the people of the pious village where the pious people were, out of the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And because of that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgave him and made him a person of paradise. But I mentioned this narration, why? Because this man, in this environment that he was living in, it was causing him to disobey Allah and commit sins. And he made the intention to go to the other place where the people there are good, pious people. So the environment won't cause him to disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he made that sincere intention, and he made path to seek that mercy and forgiveness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why the migration for the sake of Allah is one of those things that will expiate all the sins. And obviously this man, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgave him. But he did something about his situation. He did something about his situation. And we see all around the world, my dear brothers, the believers, they're being oppressed. In many parts of the world, the believers are being oppressed. And we mentioned one instance we were discussing the other day about France, about the oppression the Muslims are facing in France. We know about the niqab ban. The brother was mentioning the other day that Muslim women, children, obviously another ban they have in France is the women cannot wear the khimar, the hijab, in school. So as they walk to the school, they wear the hijab. And as when they get to the gates of the school, they have to take it off. Obviously those people who believe, for example, the niqab obviously is banned in public. So those people who believe is fard, is it like obviously they feel they're being oppressed and being forced to disobey Allah and take it off. So the point I'm trying to make, my dear Muslims, is that a valid reason to disobey Allah? This country that I'm living, they banned the niqab, which maybe the person believes is fard. So I take it off now. And they're oppressing me. They're bringing all these laws. They're stopping me from worshipping Allah. The point I'm trying to make, my dear Muslims, the person will say, this, I was weak and I was oppressed and I was forced to disobey Allah. But as we mentioned the verse, the earth of Allah is wide. The earth of Allah is wide. If you cannot worship Allah and fear Him and stick to His commands in one place, go somewhere else. Go somewhere else where you won't be forced to disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But don't make the excuse that, look, I'm being oppressed, so I have to disobey Allah. In this verse, Allah, the angels, they never gave the person an excuse, because the person he never sought the means to go to another place where he won't be oppressed. That's why again and again Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds the people that we never oppress them, rather they oppress themselves. So my dear brothers, if any land that you are in, any place where this environment is causing you to disobey Allah, it becomes wajib upon you to leave that place and go to another place where you won't be forced and compelled to disobey Allah, where you can practice your deen without fear and without oppression.